Welcome. I'm Kevin Miller. This is a podcast about how we make meaning of life and experience the miracle of living. In this episode, how to deepen relationships with well-constructed questions. So cultural testimony right now is that while we are in more contact with people than ever, we're also feeling more isolated, disconnected, and lonely. That's not some broad brush opinion of mine, but I continue to get the research and surveys that back this up and to just be a person out in the world experiencing other folks. We seem to be a culture so hungry to be heard and understood and loved. And from this, we've become a culture that works so hard to tell. We want to tell our opinion and our viewpoint and thoughts and feelings and be accepted and affirmed. And we ask fewer and fewer questions and have fewer and fewer questions asked of us. But this isn't a focus on simply asking more questions, but asking meaningful questions that foster true connection. So my guest calls them well-constructed questions. Topaz Adizes is an Emmy Award-winning writer, director, and experienced design architect. Really like that label. He's an Edmund Hillary Fellow and Sundance School Stories of Change Fellow. His works have been selected to Cannes, Sundance, IDFA, and South by Southwest. Featured in New York Magazine, Vanity Fair, the New York Times, and he's garnered an Emmy for new approaches to documentary. He is currently the founder and executive director of the experience design studio, The Skin Deep. There's my focus. If you'll go to YouTube and search for The Skin Deep, you'll find his channel. He's got almost 1 million subscribers. And on the channel, you will see couples. They may be married or parent and child or best friends or any pairing of two people desiring a close relationship. And they take turns answering questions that Topaz and his team have prepared. Questions that open each other up and connect. So I just fascinate myself with the concept and really feel like I connected, as you'll hear, with Topaz. He has a new book that digs into the concepts. It's called 12 Questions for Love, a guide to intimate conversations and deeper relationships. You can also find a lot of offerings, including actual opportunities to get products to help you ask these questions in your real life. If you'll just go to skindeep.com. So coming up next, my discussion with Topaz Adizes and questions that foster connection and love. Let's see how we can make better meaning of our lives today. Topaz, your book, just the headline, focused on questions. I am at a point where I think questions have more gravity to me in my life than ever before. So thank you for being here. Thank you even more for being awake at 2 a.m. in India to spend time with me. I'm incredibly honored.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thanks for having me, Kevin. I'm happy for this convo.
I want to get deep into questions, but let's into the type of questions and those types of things. But I want to also, from a 10,000 foot view, just look at questions. Probably by accident, maybe. I mean, I grew up on How to Win Friends and Influence People, that type of construct. Right, yeah. And we know that somebody hearing their name is gold, and asking them a question and getting them to talk about themselves. I mean, I knew that from an early age and employed that. And even here, this is an interview style show. I always have guests. My job in that way is to ask questions. And so I've gotten to be known as a guy who asks questions. Now we'll get in again to what type of questions, but just over there, questions. I feel, and I'm going to ask you what your feeling is on the pulse of the culture, that we're at a place where we ask less questions than ever, socially and relationally. Well, tell me your thoughts there.
No, absolutely. I think you get good at what you practice. And what are we practicing in society now, especially because of social media? Everyone's on their phones, looking at their own silo reflection, echoing back at them. And everyone is talking on social media. No one's listening. There's no practice of listening, really. It's like hearing back the echo of your own opinion instead of actually having conversations with people, that may or may not disagree with you, such that you can create meaning. But that comes out of having an uncomfortable conversation, if you will, because maybe we have a different perception of things. So we're not practicing that discomfort of like making meaning of something through conversation. We're getting the echo back of our own opinions and silos, and that's not really listening. I don't think we practice the art of actually listening. I think a lot of the content we get are speaking at us, and it's not the content we're seeing is not one that is of listening content. Like just to move on that more, like if you look at our content that we have on YouTube and TikTok, it's two people talking. You see both their faces at the same time. We've done this for now in our 13th year, over almost 1,300 pairs now. When you watch that, you're watching people listening to each other. So you're watching content, not that you're being spoken at, but you're watching content that is listening to one another. And you in turn are listening to what they're listening to, which is each other. That gives us an opportunity to practice something different than what we've had before. And I think that's what I hear in your question or your reflection about society.
Yeah. Thank you. You mentioned, speaking at my good friend, Jake Eagle. He's the co-author of a book called The Power of Awe. But I was just talking in conversation with him, and he says, yeah, I went and we spent time with this couple, and the guy's, some big pedigree astrophysicist and psychologist, blah, blah, blah. He said, pretty neat guy, but he was just and he found himself coming out with a word. He's such a teller. He's constantly telling you. I've been more sensitive to that concept of if I'm doing that one, and then how often I realize people are so fervent, it seems, and so focused on telling. They want to tell people what they know, what they think, what they did, and we tell and we tell and we tell. And I sat in an airport restaurant not long ago, and two guys that happened to sit down next to each other, they start talking, and one of them was a teller for 30 minutes. And I thought when they left, the one guy knows a lot about this dude. This dude knows nothing about the other guy. This guy just told about stuff about himself. And I thought, neither of them really learned anything. We didn't glean anything. I think the biggest thing, and I think what you seem to have such a magnifying glass is, there is no connection.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm right here. I'm right here.
That
Are we
connecting.
Together? Yeah.
How we connect. Are we connecting? I would say, is that at the heart of what you're seeing, that we got lots of communication more than ever and less connection?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think, Esther Perel has a saying where the quality of your life is commensurate to the quality of your relationships. Okay, great. So how do you have quality relationships? Well, one way is have really good quality conversations. Okay, great. How do you have quality conversations? That's where we come in, my team and I, from what we've done, what the work we've done for the last 12 years, now 13, is create the space and ask well-constructed questions. If you create the space where you ask well-constructed questions, that creates incredible conversations where you're really exploring the dynamic between you, your relationship, things that you may not have discussed before, or realized before, or always felt but couldn't articulate. And that creates a great conversation, which then creates a stronger relationship, a more fulfilling relationship, a more joyful one, right? And I think that's what I've learned. That's the journey I've been on. It started off as an experiment, which worked, and then we just kept doing it. The experiment being bringing two people in a room that knew each other, them facing each other, giving them a few questions to ask each other, and just filming it with three cameras. Sorry, filming it with three cameras. And from that, I've just learned, okay, if you construct questions this way, if you sequence questions in this way, if you create the space where both can explore and there's permission to explore, and they understand that that's what the space is expecting of them. And what I mean by that is, if your partner comes home today and goes, Kevin, why do you love me? You're not wondering why you love your partner. You're wondering, where is this coming from? And similarly, if they come home and they say, Kevin, I love you so much from the stars, the moon, and you mean so that you're not really receiving it because you don't really know where it's coming from. But if you pull out a box of card games and we're going to play this game and we shoot out a random question, and the question is, why do you love me? Now the space is being created for one to give and for one to receive, right? Because that question of like, what's the context, where's this coming from, has been answered. We're playing a card game. Or we're reading the book, 12 Questions for Love. Let's ask these 12 questions. We've created a space. We have well-constructed questions. Now we can go and explore the space between us. And oftentimes, what I find really interesting is, especially like my friends and like Topaz, I've been married 30 years. I know everything about my partner. Of course, I don't really need to ask these questions. I know everything. I know what they're going to respond. It's, my question is, well, are you the same person you were 32 years ago? Have you not changed? Have you not grown? What makes you think the other person hasn't? What makes you think that your relationship has not changed and grown? Oftentimes, the people closest to us is who we take the most for granted because we love them so much. We know they got our back. We know that, and we kind of don't mind. We don't tap in to the space between the relationships between us, which have so much power and energy and joy and ingredients to taste and explore, to deepen our sense of living. It's ironic.
Okay, let me ask a couple things, Topaz.
Yeah.
One is, if I'm hearing this message right now, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm hearing this, and they're going to hear more, and I realize, gosh, I'm a teller. I tell a lot, so I'm supposed to step back and ask questions. I interest myself in how we view our own identity amongst this. Is my identity at a place where I don't need to tell? I don't have this voracious need to tell and be heard and be known and be validated and be affirmed and all these things. Or even if I do, just stop.
Mm-hmm.
That there's either I need to find some security in myself, or I at least need to act in a way that I'm not so needy if I'm going to have an honest, genuine, authentic inquiry.
Mm-hmm.
Thoughts?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what comes up for me when you say that is, for me, it's less so about the teller and the listener. It's more so about the give and the take.
Yeah.
So in that conversation where you have two people in the airport, restaurant, and you heard that one was talking for 30 minutes. So that person was, in some sense, you could say they're giving. They're giving all of their story. The other one's taking because they're listening. You could also say the one who's telling is just taking because they're taking the attention of the other. They're not really gaining the insight of the other. They're not finding out who the other person is. They're just taking the time, the airways, and dominating the space. So to me, I think it's a dance. It's a dance. It's a balance. Sometimes, look, I'm way more comfortable listening, and in some sense, that gives me more power because I'm sharing less. They don't know so much about me, but I know a lot about them, right? But that's in some sense one-sided. Like, I'm not giving back. In some sense, you could say the teller is actually being vulnerable and opening up and sharing, and the listener is not sharing, not giving back because they're not opening themselves up and sharing their own vulnerability. So where is the dance? Where is the give and take? Where is the mutual movement of sharing? And sometimes you'll notice in a conversation where people deepen is that one person opens up, it becomes vulnerable. And not usually, but what can happen is the other one then has taken one takes the lead in being vulnerable, and the other one reflects that lead and matches it. And then we continually become more and more vulnerable, so we get a sense of vulnerability and connection mutually. Or sometimes one person just becomes super vulnerable and the other one doesn't go down, doesn't go vulnerable, just receives. So for me, it's less so about, oh, you're just a teller, you talk too much. It's more about, are you giving and are you receiving? Whether that's giving your own vulnerability or giving your time and attention in the listening.
Okay. That brings up to me.
Yeah.
One, Topaz, I have definitely been guilty of sitting there asking questions I'm trying to think, was I trying to remain in power? I don't know. Possibly sometimes. Sometimes I think I just didn't really care.
Mm.
I didn't really care about the relationship enough to share about myself. So I'm just kind of passing the time and let you talk about yourself. And there's not really care. So now I find myself with two aspects. One, of I kind of budgeting my time. If I don't care, why am I sitting here talking? Be honest
Mhm.
enough and brave enough to get out of the situation and be honest there.
Mm.
Two, to question, do I have general interest, genuine interest? And I would imagine that we look at this book sitting over my shoulder, 12 Questions for Love, that there's an aspect of, I imagine with you and all the couples you've worked with or all the opportunities to work with people, that there's some that you realize, or maybe the construct helps them realize we don't care enough, or one person
Mm.
doesn't care enough.
Mm.
Does it expose sometimes?
Absolutely. Um, that's why sometimes you get people have a conversation, and because they're having that conversation, they realize all the unsaid things or all the elephants in the room that they're not confronting. You don't necessarily have to talk about it. The fact that you're not talking about it, everyone knows the feeling inside. And so then how resilient is your relationship if you're not capable of talking about it? How resilient is your relationship if you can't talk about it? Or if so you avoid it. Okay, fine, you avoid it. But then life happens. Then something happens that forces you to contend with that. That's been my experience. That's what I've seen on 50 years on this planet, that, you want to avoid something, that's fine. And you try to shut down, that's fine. And then at some point, life is going to throw something at you that forces you to face connection, face reality of some sort of, force you to step out of your comfort zone so
Yeah.
that you can grow. Um, how many relationships are there that they don't talk? They don't talk about the real things. They don't talk. They let everything under the surface because they're scared. If they talk about it, it will disrupt the relationship and break it. Okay. Yeah, how long can you do that for? 10, 15, 20 years? Then something happens. Your parent gets sick. There's an affair. A child is, gets in an accident. Something happens that, oh my God, we cannot keeping everything in the closet, hid, under the surface, repressed. Something's going to happen in life that forces you to deal with it. And so then the question is, how flexible am I? Are we both? How flexible am I in communicating? How flexible am I in listening and feeling discomfort and sitting in my vulnerability? How capable are we as a couple to sit in the discomfort of the things we don't know or the things that we're voicing? How it's like at the gym. I mean, you're an athlete. Like, if you had to go do a course, the Tour de France, you couldn't just do that tomorrow. You would have to train for that for 6 months, 9 months, a year, right? Same thing in a relationship. Like, how capable are you of dealing with the fires in your connection if you don't practice at the fireplace? With the smaller fires. I'm using analogies here. I hope it's not more confusing.
No, I'm just thinking, Topaz, in how I want to. Well, let me go here. So questions. I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
put asking questions above telling. Period. As a greater benefit or more opportunity for connection. But let's go to the next step. So I spent a lot of time then crafting, good questions, even here on the show. Good
Yeah.
questions. I got accolades and applause for, good questions. But when you said, constructing,
Well constructed questions.
yeah, really good questions. I wasn't always doing that. I was sometimes asking questions that, I knew they were good questions, but I
Yeah.
didn't care. And I think that came through. And I
Mm,
think the shift now of
mm.
I'm not asking a question unless I really care. I'm really
Right.
interested enough to sit here and spend the time. So
Right.
a meaningful question, again, I think I'm just um, continually impacted by the power
The
of that.
next book is called The Question is the Answer. That's the
Okay.
next book. Because
Okay.
we're so focused on the answer, we don't realize all the powers in the question.
Yeah.
All the powers in the question, but we don't shape our questions. We're not trained at shaping our questions. And I think there's a good reason for that, because frankly, that's where all the power is. When you're in a business meeting and the CEO says, ask the question, why did the campaign fail? all the power is in their hands because now we're answering the question why the campaign failed. But if that leader said, wait, was this campaign a failure and what do we learn from it? Or even like, what have we learned from this campaign and what can we do to improve next time? The answers that is fetched from that question, or the answers that are fetched from that question are way more empowering. And so the one who yields a question has a lot of power, but are we constructing them in a way that gives us answers that are empowering? And I think there's a difference between well-constructed questions and what you're saying is like meaningful questions. And to me, that comes from curiosity. Like what I hear you saying is like, I'm going to ask questions that I'm curious about. Maybe I'm not constructing them in my mind, like, in a linear fashion, scientific fashion, which we can talk about, but I'm going to ask questions that I'm curious about, because if I'm curious about it, then I'm really interested in the answer and feeling that, and that gives meaning to it. Right? Versus sometimes you just ask questions by time you don't want to open yourself up. So you just ask questions to kind of, there's many reasons why many times we don't share. We just ask questions. In your case, maybe you're bored. You don't want to participate. So you just ask questions, let them run. I have another friend, Jeff Wetzler, wrote a book called Ask, which is incredible. And, he was a young Jewish guy living in Connecticut, and he was experiencing a lot of anti-Semitism. And so as a young kid, he knew that the best way to hide was to ask questions. So he would just ask questions because that put all the emphasis on them and never on him. So it was a tool to hide. And I think what I'm hearing from you is that meaning because you're curious about it, right? You're like actually curious, and that in the list and the speaker can feel your curiosity. One thing I've learned from making documentary films for 20 years, I made documentary fiction films, and you do a lot of interviews, is that the interviewee is a reflection of the interviewer. So let's say I'm interviewing someone and they're sitting there. I'm the interviewer, they're the interviewee, and they're really nervous, right? Yeah. The best way for me to get them to relax is for me to relax. If I want them to share something vulnerable, I share something vulnerable. If I want them to break out of their formality, maybe I'll drop a curse word. To break the formality, I'll be informal, and then they will reflect me. And maybe that's also similar when you're asking questions, such as that in your own sharing, you prime the other to reflect that. If you're in a meaningful conversation where you're both curious and you both are interested in developing a relationship. And one thing I've learned from everything we do at the end, we always bring people who have a relationship because they're both invested in that conversation. The only time we bring strangers is when they're on a blind date, because then what they're invested in is possibly a spark of romance. But bringing just two strangers together into a room, okay, interesting, but you hit a little bit of a conflict or something. Why am I really invested in actually going deep there and really speaking my mind, because I'm never going to see this person again? So we kind of avoid that because the investment of that each participant has in the relationship is not that deep. But if you go to a father and son, they're really going to be in it because they have a relationship that's strong. There's a lot at stake there.
Well, I want to be candid in that I have used questions as a tool to hide, no doubt, and a tool to distract. And if there was an audit done of me, the amount of questions that I'm asked that I don't answer is probably higher than I would like to, which brings me back to being more judicious with who I'm having conversations with and to begin with.
Yeah.
But let's go to you mentioned meaning. My focus, Topaz, is really around meaning, how we create meaning, and then how we connect with ourselves, the present moment, and with others. And within that work, something that I came to with help with, I'm partnered with some folks too, and I want to share it with you. And because I'm betting that I'm tapping on something that you've known for a long time. Okay. But it's been new to me. Back to the not just asking questions. So here's my example. So if my 16-year-old daughter pops over here today, which she may, she had some auditions for a play. So normally, being the good dad and the question asker, I would say, okay, so her name's Serene. So I would say, "Hey, Serene, so how was the audition? Tell me about it." And she would tell me. Now, what is she telling me? She's not really telling me about it. She's telling me about her experience. So now as
Mhm.
I understand that, and this part of this does go to the heart of what you have talked about in the book and even mentioned today. She answers according to how I ask.
Mm.
So if I say, "Tell me about it," she tells me about it, but what she's really telling is her experience. Well, let's
Mhm.
cut that out now. Now, what I ask, and she knows this is something that we do out in the open. And I'll say, "So, Serene, how did you experience the audition?" And the change that I see, hey, how'd you experience the audition? Oh, it was blah, 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 blah. She goes, now I say, "Serene, how'd you experience the audition?" And I do this with everybody now. How'd you experience? That's my word. How do you experience? And you'll see them pause. Their body
Mhm. Mhm.
chemistry changes. They
Mhm.
usually look to one side or the other.
Mhm.
And what I realize they're doing is they are connecting with themselves. The question forces them, requires them at least, to connect with themselves. Well, now I'm sitting there watching their brain work and they're talking with their emotion. They're trying to formulate, how did I experience? And I'm really interested now because I'm getting to go on this journey of, to me, it's intimate for them to come back with. And the change in both of us, I'm enamored with, and I'm seeing the connection grow
Mhm.
with my kids and with everybody else as a result of
Mm.
me changing how I ask the question. And my interest is
Absolutely.
so genuine.
Mm.
And so this is something that I've come to again with some other folks that we're working on this, but I look through your questions. You guys this is what you're doing. You're
Yep.
requiring by proxy of the question formulation, self-discovery, and now mutual relational discovery. Fair?
Absolutely. 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 I mean, a simple example, I say construct a quality question. It's not asking the right question because every question is valid, but some are stronger than others. And then the question is at what? So if we're asking questions to deepen your relationship, to explore your relationship, right? If you start a question, if your daughter came home and you started any of your questions with is, are, do, would, should, like I don't care what comes after those words, but like about the audition. Um, did the audition go well? Would you like to go back and do the audition again? Should you have practiced more for the audition? Um, all of those questions are inviting a binary response. Yes, no. If you start the question with how did it go, like you did, you know, um, what did it feel like? So if you start a question with what, how, why, where, you cannot answer that question, whatever it is, with a yes or a no, with a binary response.
Yeah.
Where did you feel you did the best at the audition? What is a memory you'll never forget from that audition? What was it like for you, the experience? Just starting with the first word is already going to open up, is already
I just wrote them
like,
down. How, what, why, where.
yeah,
Yeah.
those like, yeah. Or even you could do like, if this, then that. What do you think about that? Or like,
Mhm.
if you're going to ask a yes, no question, did you enjoy the audition? Just throw on a wine at the end. Did you enjoy the audition? Why? But even that's like challenging, right? Like, do you think we're meant to be together? If you're asking your relationship, why? Throw that at the end if you have to. But you could ask a better question. Is like, at what moments do you feel we're meant, at what moments do you feel we're meant to be together and what moments do you feel we're not? And why do you think, what's the relationship between the two? What do you feel is the relationship between the two? So that's one, is like, what words are you starting with? The other one is just adding the word feel, or
Mhm.
if you have to, think. And I say feel because it goes to the heart, think is up to the mind. But just
Yeah.
by putting those in, you're giving them permission to articulate their subjective experience, right? So, you know, in a relation, like, um, why do we fight so much? Which is not a well constructed question, but let's just take that as an example. Why do we fight so much? And it's not a well-constructed question because all the answers that question begs are like pretty negative. You're going to
And
get a long
subjective.
list.
We fight because you're a
Well,
jerk.
not yet.
Well,
It's not
that's
fully
subjective.
subjective. It's not. It's objective. Why do we fight so much, Kevin? Why do we fight so much? And now
Well,
I'm
you're a
putting
jerk.
you
That's an objective statement about a subjective feeling. Sure.
exactly. So if I instead say, "Hey," and I'm putting you in a position of power because now you're going to say, "Well, we fight so much because of this and that." And I go, "Wait, that's not true." And now all of a sudden we're leaving. But if I say, "Kevin, why do you feel we fight so much, or why do you think we fight so much?" That question is inviting your subjective experience, which I can't really confront because it's your subjective experience. So just by asking, do you feel or do you think to a question already creates a space for less confrontation. So then the question is, as the one receiving the answer, can you sit in the discomfort of that answer and receive it? Because if I'm asking you, hey, why do you feel we fight so much? And you say, well, Topaz, because you cut me off, you raise your voice every time you talk, and you talk really fast, and you're very judgmental. Man, I got to take that, And that's an act of vulnerability on my side. If I don't get defensive and like jump in and cut you off, and instead I sit back and like, okay, thanks for that. But just adding the words, do you think or do you feel to a question creates it. Now I'm not putting you as the objective arbiter of truth, but this is your subjective experience. And there's more room for you to articulate that and for me to acknowledge it.
Well, we're at the heart of my work, but this isn't my interview; it's yours. So we'll address that later. I want to
Okay.
ask you this. This is for you personally.
Yeah.
And I don't know. There's not many people I could ask this because this is not a common understanding that what we're talking about here.
Mhm.
You, okay? I'm going to put you. So let's
Right.
say that there's an individual, and they have 10 interactions with you, 10 interactions with somebody else.
They have 10 interactions with me and
Yeah.
10 interactions with someone else. Okay.
Same kind of question. The other person asks them, "Hey, how was the audition? How was work?" Those binary questions, yes, no questions. You, on the other hand, are asking these how, what, why, where, how did you feel? How did you experience? Whereas I feel those are, you're causing them to enter into their own self-discovery, and then you're getting to share in that. The dynamic that person subconsciously experiences between the two people, what I am experiencing, I want to see what you feel, is the benefit of the connection that person feels with me as the catalyst for their 10 times of self-discovery. What I'm experiencing as I watch this with family, friends, kids, whatever, is I don't know better terms than to say I think that their connection with me, maybe it's trust, maybe it's because they've gotten intimate, I don't know, but I'm just watching it increase. And I don't know how to define it all yet, but I'm assuming you have experienced a similar thing with your own impact in people's lives.
100%. 100% happens all the time. We see in the end every time we film. We put people, we just filmed in New Orleans about 3 weeks ago. We filmed 20 couples in 3 days. 10 of those pairs flew in. We don't pay anyone to be on the end ever. We don't pay for it. It's a documentary project. 10 pairs flew in from around the country. 10 pairs flew in from around the country to participate. Because at this point, I think they've played the games, they've seen the videos, and I think they know that there is a cathartic experience that happens when you step into that space. And we know that also because that's what they tell us after every time they participate. After every production is just such a high because everyone comes out different than they go in because they're in that space of conversing, exploring the relationship and deepening it. And so that I've seen that firsthand. Then we are doing, at Dartmouth, there's a department called the Consortium of Interacting Minds. And they're studying, there's a woman named Emma Templeton, Luke Chang, and Talia Wheatley. And they're studying the and, both like what happens to a human being who's watching two other people connect. So they put them in an fMRI machine and they're looking at our videos and they're watching like what happens in the brain, what happens to the body, how do they feel when they're watching other people connect, and what happens when two people play. They put these kind of brain, the helmets on that kind of monitor, not quite as deep as fMRI machine, but can tell surface level things. moving the brain. And one of the things that they found in another study, as I understand it, because they're studying the frontal lobe of the brain, which is the most difficult because that's a sense-making part of the brain. What makes sense of the world? And, if you say the word love and I say this word love, it's different than us both saying the word blue. We can kind of correlate blue to another, or we can say up or down, and we both can point that's up and that's down. But when we say love, it's subjective. How does it feel to you might feel different to me. So in the front of our brain is the sense-making thing, function of the brain. And so how do you track an objective truth to the subjectivity of each of our sense-making, right? And what they found is that when we collectively make sense of things through conversation, we feel a deeper connection to one another. That's the research that they found, one of them. And one example they had was like, why do we gossip? And I don't remember which professors were on that paper, but I saw, they have all these big, beautiful posters when you're walking through their hallways of like the different studies. And one of them is, why do we gossip? And they've found from their research that we gossip because we're in our gossip, we're trying to make sense of the world, Jimmy, I didn't like it when Jimmy did that. It's kind of a prick. How did you feel about it? Well, it's not so bad. Really? You don't think it's so bad? So we're making sense of the world through conversation. And at the end of that experience, we actually feel more connected. Why? Because through both of us having conversations, we've kind of adjusted both of our sense-making views of the world and kind of come to a place that's more cohesive and together and integrated. And because of that, you and I feel strongly more connected. But what's happening in today's society is that we're spending so much time on our phones where we're not having conversations with other people. We're just, again, echoing back in our own silos, that we're not having those experiences of actually conversing with other people, maybe a little bit uncomfortable conversations. And when that happens, you feel a little bit deeper connection.
Man, we could do another show just on that. I'm enamored in researching just the power of that. Our language doesn't just communicate; it creates our experience. We are creating our experience. So, what I see you doing is you're helping people with the right questions to create this experience together. I read in your book, Topaz, it was a couple that it's right at the beginning, I think, couple that was married, and you just showcased the questions that was asked and the tears and the whatnot. And the one guy said, and they're not even charging us for this therapy session.
Yeah.
There's my inquiry here, that not to pit this against therapy necessarily, but from a couples. I mean, that's really your focus is couples, whether married or significant other, or parent-child, but intimate relationships, let's call it.
Yeah, it's not just couples. It's anybody who's in an intimate relationship, who's like that you care about, that you love. So we do a lot of couples, but we do friends, family, kids, and the parents. Yeah.
Tell me, and again, I'm not saying this to counter it against therapy, but to say,
but I can tell you the difference.
Tell me.
Here's the difference. I mean, God knows I've been to a lot of therapy. I go a lot of therapy. In the book, I talk about the one couples therapy I went with a person I was going to propose to, fiance, and we left that session knowing that we were not going to stay together. So I do find that there's therapy that's very, very helpful, especially when you need a guide. You need a guide to create the space to unravel something and pull the threads apart so you can look at them. But here's the thing. You're in a couples therapy. You're both looking at the therapist. So what you're training is that the therapist is the referee. The therapist is the one asking the questions. Therapist is the guide. So the muscle of your relationship in speaking to one another is not strengthening as you guys as an individuated couple. You are being trained by the therapist to create that space. And sometimes when you're in a highly contentious relationship, you need that. I'm not denying that. The difference is when you do the and, in a couples therapy session, both the couples are generally looking at the therapist and kind of talking to each other through the therapist. In the end, there's no therapist. They're looking at each other. And what happens is that the ability to sit in the uncomfortable space the discomfort together is the most important thing, because that's where growth is. And it's really important to make a distinction, which we often confound, between safety and discomfort. If I'm going to go bungee jumping or, jump out of a parachute jumping, I would hope I'm safe, because these guys have done it a million times. They got their 10,000 hours. They've checked everything. I'm going to definitely be uncomfortable when I jump off that bungee or jump out of that plane.
Yeah.
Definitely be uncomfortable, but I'm going to be safe because these guys have done it a million times. And when I'm done, I'm going to feel exhilarated. Life is going to feel huge. It's going to be an amazing experience. And I'm going to also know my own ability to step into discomfort and use courage to face fear. How often are we doing that in the relationships in our lives? So we need to create a safe space and be uncomfortable. And oftentimes when we're uncomfortable, we confound that as not being safe. And I don't exactly know where that line is. Like in toxic relationships, I'm not a professional at that. So that's definitely room for me to grow and someone else to speak on. But sometimes often what we want to do is create a safe space where you do feel uncomfortable, because that's opportunities, that's your edge where you can grow. And what's beautiful for me is that when people do what they're practicing is sitting in that discomfort together and holding that space of discomfort together versus having to rely on a therapist to hold that space. And there's two different meanings, and I don't think it's either or, and I don't think one is better. They're just for different functions. And I just think this is a different offering than therapy. And I've done both. I've done and I've done therapy, and I'm not dissuading therapy by any means, but I just think there's something about sitting and looking your partner in the eye and handling the discomfort and speaking about the questions instead of being guided through the therapist.
Thanks. And I want to ask a question on the safe space. Before I do that, though, I do want to say in this show, I am not here's the book beside me, 12 Questions for Love. I'm not going to go to any of those questions. So folks, go buy the book, one, or what are the other options they have, like the cards and whatnot? Where would you?
Yeah, we have card games. You can go to skindeep.com/shop. Find us on Amazon too. We have about 18 editions of the card games for all kinds of relationships. We even have a self deck. And the skindeep.com. Yeah, we have digital toolkits where there's like sequence questions for certain scenarios to help you with. That's a good place to go.
Well, so there's to go get the questions, which is probably going to be the easiest thing for most people. In the book, you do go through how to create, what makes a good question, how to create a safe space to have conversations, deep listening. Yeah. So you go through all those things. And so there's my recommendation and my directive for everybody. Right here, though, in the time that we have, one of the things that you said in how to create a safe space to have conversations, which you were just talking about, is let go of any agenda. So Topaz, that is a hot spot for me, because I feel that our primary purpose to communicate anything other than just, the mailman came and you're just informing somebody, even there's a motive for telling somebody, otherwise you wouldn't. When I open my mouth or take my fingers to type and communicate anything to somebody else, I have a motive. There's some reason, otherwise I would not do it. And in that motive is generally, and this is where I'm asking for your input, I tend to think, I don't know if I can do it without a bias, without an agenda. Now, can I consciously set that off and try to be open? Yes, but my struggle is the ability for us to either not have a bias, or is it just the awareness of I do, and I'm not going to function from that. Thoughts?
Totally. Name the bias.
Okay.
Right. Name it. As you name it, you're like, listen, I'm coming to this conversation and I think I know the solution. And I'm also noticing that I'm really angry. And, but I want to actually have the conversation because I want to see what else is possible. But I'm just acknowledging I haven't slept, I'm angry, and I have bias about this thing, but I could be wrong. That's why I'm open to having this conversation. And I want to have it. So you're already naming the elephant in the room. You're naming the agenda that you have behind your mind. Because often what that does is that it removes the other person from having to think about what's really going on in Kevin.
Yeah.
Right? And that creates a space in which we can both step forward. If you come up to me and you're like, Topaz, gosh, why were you late to work? Or what, why do you speak to me this way? Or why did you tell my daughter that? I'm Before I go and answer, I'm like, wait, where's Kevin coming from?
Yeah.
What happened? What is he upset about? I don't really know what's behind that. And then now I'm already in defensive posture. So I'm stepping back and I might not even answer you directly because I'm trying to figure out where's this coming from. So instead you say, hey, I just heard this and you tell me your intention, which is different than the agenda. The agenda is where you want to end up.
That's good.
The intention is where you begin. And what you want is when you want to have a conversation to connect two people, to strengthen your relationship, to make it more resilient, to make it more fulfilling, you want to go together. So you need to state where you're beginning from so that you invite them to come and join you or find the beginning point together. So even if you have an agenda that you want to get to, by stating your intention, like, hey, I do want to get there, but I don't even know if that's right. I think it is. I'm pretty sure. But you know what? I've been wrong before. And that's why I'm in a relationship with you, because maybe you're right. Maybe I'm wrong. Let's talk about it. I can't make a decision alone. It's not dictatorship. So can we talk about it? Then they know, well, he kind of has. So it's like stating your intention creates a space and invites them to start from the same starting point. Instead of, oftentimes we don't talk about our agenda, but it's intrinsic in the tone of voice. It's intrinsic in the question that we ask. So then they're wondering about the agenda instead of actually having a conversation and exploring it, because you're not inviting them to begin with you.
So I do that a lot. I'm looking for an answer. I mean, this is part of my life. I'm asking questions, but I'm doing it for an agenda because I'm trying to figure something out or make a case for this. And I'll share something, get the feedback. I do a lot of WhatsApp messages. So I'm, sending the 5-minute audio, and then I'll get a 5-minute audio back and realize real quick, oh crap, I didn't really share the context and their answer wasn't in the same. Okay, go back and go, I'm so sorry. Here's the context or my intention. I'll start using the word intention more. And even the bias, I found myself in trying to be more aware, go, okay, so you're asking me about X. First off, let me state, I really care about this. And I really want X to be true. I can't prove it. I don't know, but I want that. So just know the bias. There's the flavoring you're going to get as I try to unbiasedly, as much as I can, share whatever. And I feel like the pressure goes off for both of us.
Absolutely.
Because you're right. I'm sitting there listening to somebody now. And as I'm more and more aware, I'm thinking, I can't even hear what they're saying because I'm wondering what their motive is. Or it's apparent. You're talking and telling, but it's obvious what you want. Like, why don't you just state it and save us some time?
Right. Yeah. I mean,
So
one thing I've learned from studying philosophy is it's really helpful to look at an idea as an object, or even a relationship or a dynamic as an object, so you can look from all the directions, up, down. But most importantly, it's not in you, it's separate from you. So that you can look at it and have a little bit more practice in the discomfort of looking at things. You're practicing just sitting in discomfort because you're moving that identity as though it's me. Right? So sometimes you say, well, I'm really angry. I'm an angry guy. No. I'm feeling angry. And oftentimes I turn to anger quickly, but that doesn't mean you're an angry guy. Because if you say you're an angry guy, you're always going to be angry. Almost justifying the anger. And these are feelings. So you're making that separation, which enables you to look at the things as a 3D object. And maybe therefore it's easier to see it from the other person's point of view. Or maybe change your point of view because you're seeing it from other POVs. Yeah. I think, that's what I've learned from the philosophy of watching that. And I think that applies also to, you had Terry Real from Us, a few months back, which is amazing. That book, I loved it. It's amazing. But I think he speaks about too, it's not just you, it's us. It's us that we're working on. And if we can remove the us and look at it objectively as an us, we can work on it in a better way. Right? It's something that we can construct an approach and creates a little bit more of distance so we can see it in the bigger picture.
Okay. You mentioned point of view a couple times. And again, I'm not going to go through every aspect of the book, but you have a section in there on what makes a good question. Though my temptation is to qualify that, because I think I've been skilled at asking good questions, but now I'm looking to ask connecting questions. And that's what I
Sure.
do. I mean, if you're looking at people with, as you said, an intimate relationship, what makes a good question within an intimate relationship? Your first point is it should have a connected point of view. Explain that for us.
Okay. So I'll just quickly go. There's 5 aspects to make a really quality question,
Yeah.
well-constructed quality question in the context of a relationship.
Yeah.
Right? Whether it's at work or it's at your family or friends, anything that you're invested in. 1, I'll get to the connected last. 1, and we started it. Don't ask a binary question.
Yeah.
Don't ask a question that ends with a yes, no. Right? Ask a question that creates a space for exploration of this conversation.
Which
2,
again, I
don't
want to say the easy hack on that is you mentioned them. It's how. That's
how,
the easiest
what,
one. Just start
where,
with how. Nothing
why.
else. Yeah.
And, right? In what way? When?
Yeah.
2, don't ask a question that begs an answer that's disempowering and negative. Why do we fight so much? Right? A third one, so that's 2, empowering. Third one would be, if we're going to go the connected one, I'll go the connected one because the connective one is really interesting. Is that, and this is what many people miss. If I ask you, Kevin, what do you think? What do you think about love? And your partner says, "Hey, Kevin, what do you think about love?" And the barista at Starbucks goes, "Hey, Kevin, what do you think about love?" Your answer to those 3 questions are going to be the same. I think about love, this and that. If I ask it, if your partner asks it, if the barista asks it. But if we change it and make it connected, that reflects our relationship by saying, "Hey, Kevin, how do you think we see love similarly and differently?" If I ask you that, and your partner asks you that, and the barista asks you that, you're going to answer those questions in totally different ways. Why? Because the question acknowledges the unique person and the unique relationship who's asking it.
Love it.
Right?
I love
So
it.
oftentimes we're asking questions like, "Hey, tell me something about your your thinking." You can talk for a half an hour, but it has nothing to do with me.
Yeah.
Instead, you can say like, "Hey man, what happened to you today that you think would surprise me most?" See, you're taking me into account. Right? What happened to you today that you think would surprise me most? If I say, "What happened to you today that surprised you most?" and 5 people ask you that question, you'd say, "Man, it was like I was on the hike and I saw a snake. Surprised me, scared me." But if 5 different people ask you, "Hey, Kevin, what happened to you today that you think surprised me most?" Maybe one of those people not surprised at snakes because he knows he's on the trail all the time. So you think of it something else. That question acknowledges the person you're with and the relationship you're with in that moment in time. And also invites them because they're part of the response. You're acknowledging like your relationship with them. So just making that little tweak, like, does this question, if everybody can answer this question, no, if a number of people ask me this question and I answer it the same way, it's not a connective question. If a number of people ask me this question and it's different for every person because I have to acknowledge, like, then you know it's a connective question.
I'm gonna
Let's
leverage
practice.
you being here. Okay. This is
Great. Let's do it.
purely selfish because
Great.
I'm talking about the benefit that I am experiencing for me by simply asking somebody not how it was, but how did you experience it? But that's not necessarily a connected question.
Exactly.
But that's an easy hack for me to help them discover themselves. Then I get to go on that journey. So I love that. I don't even like the word hack. I just don't know a better word,
But great. But if you ask your daughter, "Hey, what did you experience today that you think I'd appreciate the most? What did you experience at the addition that you think would surprise me, that I would learn from? What did you experience today that you think would probably scare me tremendously, but you faced it?" Right?
love it.
Then all of a sudden, it's not necessarily about her audition. It's about your relationship. It's about how she sees you.
Hey man, I'm not doing that. You just gave me, that's worth, send me an invoice.
That's what everyone says that they do the end. That's why I said it's better than psychotherapy, like you talked about. Yeah.
But what a simple shift. These
Totally.
things remind me I remember when my former wife one time, said, I'm reading this thing on attachment, and it says that when the kid comes in with the banged up knee, instead of just rushing for the Band-Aids and cleaning it up, just give them a hug, that it'll help connection. I'm like, seriously? All right. Well, so we'll try. It's easy fix. I don't feel anything different about the kid, but I'm just acting different and seeing the results. Like,
Wow.
holy smokes, just a
Wow.
little shift in this.
Yeah.
So here I am thinking or feeling the benefit of asking the person, how they experience it. But now if I connect myself to it, if it's a relationship I'm looking to connect with, which why would I be in a relationship I didn't want to? It's just a shift. Just include me.
And also what happens is that now you're also more interested in the answer.
Oh my gosh, intrinsically.
Right? Because it's a reflection of you and a reflection of your connection. So all of a sudden you're more invested in the answer because it reflects you. And now your conversation is that much more elevated because it's a reflection of your judgments of each other, of your connection, of your relationship. And therefore also it deepens it because you're feeling the relationship more. Like you're asking your daughter, how was your audition? It's about her experience. Great. Wonderful. But what was your audition like that you think would scare me? Now it's about her reflection of what she thinks scares you.
I'm 100% interested in her answer.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it also brings, she's making sense of her audition. She's also making her sense of your fear. You are making sense of your fear. You're making sense of, and that sense making together brings you closer, gives you a sense of feeling more connected.
Yeah, you're including, let's see, how would we say it? I'm going from not just helping her with her self-discovery, but now it's a mutual discovery we get to do.
Yeah. And I think, look, I'm not saying you do this for all the questions. I just think that's a helpful tool, to like bring yourselves closer, to pull in the heartstrings of your relationship.
Well, I appreciate you saying that, because I'm finding myself having to watch out a little bit that I'm not Captain Intensity on every communication, that I also let her just sit there and just tell me about the day and the whatever, and I'm not trying to pull everything back.
The fact that your daughter, when you told the story, she opened up and was talking, that is a reflection of clearly a really wonderful relationship you have, because we all know how difficult it is to get kids to open up, and especially teenagers, tell you, not give you one-word answers. So
I want to testify honestly, not to myself, but to these methods, because I have a 16-year-old daughter and she's 17. She's 17. She's 17. And my other son next to her just turned 16. And I could not have a more, I've got a lot of kids, so I've experienced this, the connectedness, I would say the trust, and even their just affection, wanting to be with me. And, on the couch, they are all over me, and it doesn't really relate to who they are to everyone. It's what I'm seeing, the connection with me. And I'm watching this unfold and thinking it's because of what you're doing. It's asking these questions, and the questions by proxy construct this opportunity.
Yeah.
Now, there is still, I think I do, as I'm looking at, as people are hearing this, tell me about I'm not sure how to phrase the question, kind of what can derail this. Cause I could see people hearing this and go, man, it sounds great, but it takes a lot of courage. How's that?
Well, okay. So the fourth one about a well-constructed question is offer a question as a gift, not as an attack, which is part of creating the space. So it's much easier to shake a open palm than it is a finger pointing at you. So if you come at them with a question that, is attacking because you want a certain agenda, you want a certain response, you want to get to a certain space, you're not really inviting them to shake your hand. You're not really inviting them into the space to explore. And I think that's where sometimes, even in the book, right? Sometimes people don't want to, I can tell you, people in my own family don't want to have the conversations. It's probably why I ended up making the end, was because of my own lack of sense of intimacy and connection with people in my family. And they don't want to have the conversation. And fair enough. I think you have to invite people into a space. And if they don't want to step into it, you let go. And I think, the best way to do that is that, because even if inviting them to play, a part of that is, when I say let go, is that part of that is if they're willing to step into it, you have to be willing to accept the answers they give.
Well, can I ask there on that, inviting someone in, that there are times, and I'm imagine you've seen this acutely and many times, where there is sometimes you realize, or they realize, that there's either one, not enough interest, or there's two, too much threat.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, there's someone that, like, for instance, having these conversations are so uncomfortable that they feel is emotionally abusive. Right. That's the term they use. I have that in my family. So then you're like, okay, I have to step away. But let's acknowledge that I want to have these kind of conversations. You experience them as emotional abuse. They're clearly, I'm going to step away. But just so you know, that means I'm going to be very muted, and you're not going to see all of me. And our relationship will be quite reserved, surface level, definitely not resilient because we can't go deep, and definitely not fulfilling and not really joyful because I'm just giving you 5% of me. And we're talking about simple, basic things, the weather and some whatever we want that doesn't actually speak about our relationship and how we're experiencing life as human beings and this experience called life.
Tell me, I'm thinking about myself here again, that if I had been sitting in one of your chairs across from my former spouse, I don't know, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago, I don't know. I'm concerned that, aside from some other issues, maybe, but there's a degree of my own incompetence. Well, let's say emotional unintelligence. As we got in, when we first started counseling, there were so many times when the counselor would ask XYZ, and I go, I just don't know.
Yeah.
If there's
practice.
Okay.
It's like practice. It's practice, right? So how often, like, not we all. If you want to be in good shape and you want to do the Tour de France or you want to do the big hike, you're going to go exercise. If you want to keep your body, whatever it is, long life, you'll go to the gym. If you want to keep your car maintained, you're going to get checked once a year, right? How often are we checking the maintenance and practicing our own relationship?
Yeah.
Right? How do we even do that? Well, here's how we do it. We create the space where you don't have an agenda, you have an intention. You create a space where it's clear what we're permissible and not permissible to do. Meaning, you don't cook in the bedroom and you don't sleep in the kitchen. You know what you're doing in the kitchen. You know what you're doing in the bedroom.
Yeah.
So how do you create a space where, like, hey, this is a space where we have these kind of conversations because we created it's permissible. When I was living in New York, whenever I needed to, like, get away from the noise and everything, on Mott Street, just south of Houston, there was a beautiful big church, and I would go in it and I'd sit there because it was so quiet. And everybody knows, why is it quiet? Because that's what's expected. Not during a church service. It's open at all times. You go in, it's quiet, and it's expected. Anybody walking in knows, quiet. So what are the spaces in the home of a relationship that we know what are permissible and not? How do we create those spaces? How do we create the spaces that we're going to practice here are what I call emotional articulation. It's not emotional intelligence where I know how you're feeling or how I'm feeling. It's the ability to articulate it. Right? Because, like, when you're sitting in the therapy and you're in the couples and they're like, well, how do you feel? It's not like you didn't have feelings. You just didn't know how to articulate.
Yeah.
And how are you ever going to know how to articulate if you don't practice it? And where are you going to practice it? Where are you going to practice training, exercise, or riding the bike or fixing your car? You take it to the maintenance shop, you go to the gym, right? Where do we go? Where are the spaces that we create to practice our relationship? That's what we need to do. That's the opportunity that I'm offering through my book and through our work, right? And it could be as easy as a card game. Matter of fact, I'm going to send you, if you want, I'm going to send you the healing deck because those questions just those questions beg answers that bring healing.
Thank you. I will
Yeah.
happily receive
Yes,
because
please.
I have healing to I have healing, more healing in front of me. And on that note, actually do that because I was going to wrap us up and just say, will you agree to a part two?
Oh, man.
I
Done.
I want to hit another tangent with you, and
Okay.
and I also want to let you go to bed because it's what, 3 o'clock there now,
Yeah.
3 a.m.
3:15, 3:15.
Uh, man, Topaz, thank you.
Oh, thank you, Kevin. Thank you,
Such a
man.
joy, such a gift. You have, I get to employ this today. I get to employ some of these immediately, and I'm exciting myself and grateful. So
Yeah,
thank you for taking the time in the middle of your night across the world and
absolutely.
for just the work that you're doing. I am a fan and now follower. So
My man.
thank you, Topaz.
Oh, thank you.
Well, thanks for joining us in the discussion. That again is Topaz Adizes. And the book that I was referencing, 12 Questions for Love, a guide to intimate conversations and deeper relationships. And you can also find offerings to get those questions that you can use in your own life if you go to skindeep.com and YouTube. Go to YouTube, type in The Skin Deep, and you'll probably find yourself enmeshed there for a long time as you watch people truly connect. So, till next time, here's to you and me making better meaning in our lives and experiencing the miracle of living.
Yeah.